And good morning. Welcome to Backstory with Dr. B. It's what is it, Wednesday morning, the 30th of July. July is going by super fast. Hope everybody's having a great day. I'm going to continue a little bit of a thread I had from that last video I did talking about upleveling. And I'm not trying to slag off the concept of upleveling. I've looked some stuff up on it online because I'd really never heard the term. Seems to be kind of like a little bit of a fad right now for people to talk about upleveling. Sometimes it's used more like in an energetic sense. I think it's just the same kind of recycled stuff, that people have always done, like step up your game, and you got to get your performance up, and this kind of a thing. Because help me achieve my goals. Because that was the whole thing about the Life West guy. It's like, I want you to up level your game so you can help me achieve my goals. Well, of course, nobody's ever going to be as into your goals as you are. And I made the point that as you grow older, you really should be focusing more on your old goals. Although when you're younger and at different stages in life too, you're going to want to. It does help, to be part of an organization and to help them achieve their goals. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. Both, in a civic duty kind of a way in terms of local politics and regional politics, and in terms of social activities in general, of which I am the last person to expound on that, because I tend to be a little bit antisocial because I talk to so many people all day. By the time I get home, I'm like, my wife's like, she's been home alone all day making art and doing all kinds of cool stuff and refinishing furniture. Oh, she's just ready to talk. And I'm like, baby, I'm down to I got 4 gold coins left. If you hit me once, they're all going to fly out like Mario Brothers, and that's it for me for today. I won't have anything else to say. But I did do a little bit of work on upleveling, and there's some websites where it's like, well, the difference between upgrading and upleveling. Upgrading is like getting a better fridge, or like buying a better car. It's more of a consumerism kind of a thing, whereas upleveling is more like, I want to add some skill or improvement to myself as a person, and now I'm willing to pay for it, which is kind of funny because it's actually just another form of consumerism, except this time you're paying for services, which if we wait very much longer in Maryland, we will have to pay taxes on, because we just went from a $3 billion surplus to a $2 billion deficit in one guy's term. So sometimes upleveling, though, doesn't look like upleveling. And I tend to always look at things from sort of the I don't want to say I'm always looking at things from a negative perception, but I always want to look at the flip side of what somebody's trying to sell me, and whatever this thing is that's going on in culture. I don't really care. But I find it fun. I find it fun to play with. You can go like, oh, what's going on? Oh, yeah, I've seen that before. Anyway, so with respect to upleveling, it's like, yeah, let's say you wanna grow as a person, and you wanna have some new skill. Maybe you're willing to finally pay somebody to have have a personal trainer, or a personal chef, or to arrange something. You know what I mean. So something to make your life sort of at a higher level of health, higher level of function. Scott Adams would talk about adding talents to your personal repertoire of things as adding to your talent stack. And I don't always agree with Scott Adams, and I'm very sad that he's got pancreatic cancer, because I love the Dilbert cartoons. And he was right about Trump winning the 2016 election. And he's made hay with that. It's worked out great. He still lives in this place in Pleasanton, over in California. Yeah, my home area. My first job was up in Danville, just a few minutes up the street. Dr. Murphy, Dan Murphy from Life West, was one of my instructors at the chiropractic college level. He practiced in Pleasanton for some time, and then sort of transitioned into doing mostly research articles and lectures and speaking, sort of something that I would like to emulate. Here's me latching onto somebody's agenda, but it's my agenda, not his. I'm not helping him. He's done fine. But he came up with this program called the Chiropractic Certification for Spinal Trauma, and when I was first in practice, I signed up for that, and it was a series, I think they're like 10 seminars. I had to fly down to LA like once a month to get them, and it was basically a whiplash and spinal trauma certification. And I had, when I was still in chiropractic college, one of my very first cases was a personal injury case. And I was treating under the direct supervision of the guy that was directing that outpatient clinic, Dr. Cooperstein, who had enormous amount of trust in me and was very validating. Probably one of the best mentors I've ever had. And he nominated me for being intern supervisor, so I would actually supervise the unlicensed doctors and make sure that they were doing their adjustments correctly. Some of the students complained that they didn't like it because I didn't have a specific technique, like I was almost an apostate, or, he dabbles a little in this religion and that religion. Not that a technique is a religion, but it can kind of sometimes feel like a religion. Anyway, he said that's why I picked him, because you're supervising people and they may have eclectic techniques. They may be doing a technique that you're not wedded to. If all you can do is Gonstead, well, you're not going to be very helpful helping somebody who's a motion palpation guy. And this is chiropractic jargon for just different ways we use to move the bones and to relieve articular fixations and subluxations and to do what we do. That whole YouTube backcracking thing. Which is repulsive. But I'll touch on that later. So anyway, upleveling can sort of look like chaos sometimes. So I'm going to start off this by discussing a little bit of chiropractic philosophy. Now, chiropractors have this absolutely fixated on philosophy. And thank God, because if we didn't have chiropractic philosophy, we would have long since been absorbed and gone the osteopath route and been completely denuded of anything special. We would just be gray. We'd taken all the color out of us. Instead of being the wonderful, multi-hued profession that we currently are. D.D. Palmer was the discoverer of chiropractic, and his son B.J. Palmer was what's always known as the developer of chiropractic. So these two people had the major influence. They had founder's power. So when somebody is a founder of a movement or a profession or something like that, they have an undue influence in the direction that it's going to take. Just like a parent in a family, it's going to have an undue influence in the direction of the children and the family. And so their philosophy was one of vitalism. And vitalism is the idea that we're not just leaky robots. We're not just selfish genes. We're not just, there is no consciousness. It's just an illusion. I mean, the hardcore science, like Francis and Crick. Crick was one of the guys who discovered the DNA helix. His mission in life was to destroy the concept of vitalism, that we're actually alive, that we're actually here, that we actually have consciousness, that we're not just, our consciousness isn't just a byproduct, but our consciousness actually is an organizing, creative thing that drives the force of our life. And so in chiropractic philosophy, there was the thought, well, there's a universal intelligence in the world. The universe acts by mathematical principles. It can be calculated. The track of the planets and the stars can be, we can send a spaceship up in outer space. We can track that. We can see things. We understand there are laws and mathematics that make the universe work. Chemistry works the same way. And so that there is an obvious intelligence behind it because our intelligence recognizes it. So that'd be the universal intelligence, the universal field of reality, space-time continuum, speed of light, all of this kind of stuff. But at an even deeper level of a deliberate intelligence working with the universe. So that ties in very nicely with Christianity and the Big Bang, because you would have God said, let there be light. Boom, Big Bang. That made a lot of people really uncomfortable. And in fact, before the Big Bang Theory in the 1960s, it was viewed that the universe was just sort of eternal and was just going to slowly wind down. They didn't see it as a growth process. But in reality, the universe is changing all the time. In fact, Rupert Sheldrake, he's the scientist who's big into morphic resonance. He views complex systems, even in terms of galaxies, suns, planets, and stars, as being sort of having a degree of consciousness. Like the universe actually has a consciousness. As a Christian, God is upholds all things by the word of his power. So God said, let there be light. But Jesus was the Logos, the Word of God, and Jesus was the one that was engaged in the actual act of creation and maintaining the space-time continuum and all of the laws of physics. So, long story short, then there's also the personal, there's also innate intelligence. That's the innate intelligence of our body, and that's what chiropractors strongly are trying to work toward. By working with you, we want to help your body's ability to heal itself work. We have confidence in you. We have a belief that your body knows what it needs and it wants to heal. And we're trying our best, without drugs or surgery, to restore your body to that natural state. So it could be with diet, could be with exercise, spinal manipulation. Obviously, the early chiropractors were absolutely fixated on it. Yeah, fixated on it. Sorry, that's a joke. We call it, another word for subluxation is a fixation. And a subluxation is a block in the body's nervous system's ability to express itself to cause maximum healing. If we remove that interference, the body will naturally heal itself. And so we have universal intelligence, which is more at the cosmic level, more the God level, God the Father kind of level. We have innate intelligence, which would probably be more like the Holy Spirit, right? And from a Christian perspective, right? The Holy Spirit's what indwells you. That's what's actually working with your creative energy. And D.D. Palmer and B.J. Palmer viewed the human nervous system as a receiver for this. And this ties in with Jungian psychology too, because Carl Jung also believed that nature, quote unquote, as a whole, was attempting to learn how to express itself through the human nervous system and human consciousness. By us having consciousness, we could appreciate the work of creation, and then God comes into consciousness through us and through all the different life forms, because they do have consciousness. I mean, if you don't think cats show love and have every Shakespearean emotion, both positive and negative, then you're just it's crazy to think that animals are non-conscious beings. They're very conscious. They have a certain level of consciousness. I mean, you're not going to play chess with a cat, because he'd cheat. Depends on the cat, right? So anyway, and so then then chiropractors view the third level. You got universal, then you've got innate intelligence. That's what's helping you heal your body. What I'm working with when I'm working on your spine, or working with you nutritionally, or even in terms of exercise, or maybe even just a word of kindness or wisdom that might help you to completely reorient your take on your physical problem. Sometimes healing comes that way too. Oftentimes it's the things you say in passing that somebody will come back to you with later and go like, you know what, that one thing you said really helped me. And of course, my thinking is, oh boy, I hope I didn't say something bad to somebody else that really put them off the rails. Yeah, and I never try to do that, but I mean, who's perfect, right? And then there's educated intelligence. So educated intelligence is the stuff of your current life. It's your personal subconscious, the things that got implanted into you, your childhood upbringing, the stress levels of your mother when you were in the womb, the epigenetic fields and the expression of different types of DNA. But to think of DNA as a vehicle of consciousness is just a joke. DNA codes for protein. I mean, you can't find out how birds are going to fly in a flock by looking at the DNA, any more than you can find out what your checkbook balance is on your Quicken account in your computer by grinding up your computer and analyzing the components and the metallic components and the silicone and the wires and the copper. You destroy the mechanism, you lose the programming, you lose the intelligence by disorganizing a system. And then you're like, see, look, we're just chemicals. It's like, no, dude, you just destroyed the system. It has to be analyzed at the holistic level, not the micro level. Dragging people down into their component parts is not how you have to study people. It's clear we're conscious, and this is, I don't know, we may be in a matrix, but we're definitely conscious. And if not, it's the best illusion ever, so you should better kind of roll with it. Anyway, so childhood imprinting and all that would be your educated intelligence, what chiropractors would call that. And so that's like the things that you could pull up or that influenced you. Like, why do I have these hang-ups? And, why is this a problem for me? Or why does that bother me? Because of the way I was raised as a child. So I'll use my own example. So little personal disclosure here. I told this story to a patient a few weeks ago, just briefly. And he laughed. He's like, oh, you're serious? I'm like, yeah. The story is that when my parents got divorced when I was like 9 or 8, and my sister was 1 year younger than me, my dad wanted custody, but my mom was given custody. And he didn't think that was right, and so he kidnapped my sister and I and drug us all over the country to different locations. And the reason we had to keep shifting locations was because Mom hired law enforcement and Dad did have a warrant out for his arrest. And we moved to Denver, actually Aurora, Colorado. We got caught there, so we had to pack up in the middle of the night and leave. And then we drove back to California, and we stayed in Morro Bay, California. That's when I started getting migraines. And I had a couple this week. So my body learned how to torture itself with pain by somehow suppressing whatever it was I was feeling at that point. First leg of the trip, wasn't so bad. But once getting caught and having to flee, I'm only 9, but I'm starting to figure this out. So I'm starting to get migraines. And then, of course, he tried to get us into Canada because they caught us in California again. And the guy at the Canadian border wouldn't let us in. We were hauling a U-Haul. He's like, "What's your business in Canada, eh?" And it's like, "We're just going to visit with a load full of furniture and 2 children." No, Dad just told him. He's like, "Yeah, she got custody, and I felt like I'd be a better parent, and so I'm proving that by kidnapping my children and stealing them from their mother and cutting off any possibility of ongoing relationship with her." Never a communication for 3 years while we were gone. She'd send cards to his parents and say, "Please forward birthday cards to the kids, birthday presents. I know you know where they're at. You don't have to admit anything. Just send them on so they can know I'm communicating and I'm thinking about them." Nothing. Not a word. I never got a word from Mom because they cut us off from all communication. And of course the Canadian guy was like, "Well, hey, I totally understand what you're doing there, Hoser, but I can't let you in, but I won't say anything. Just turn around and go back." And I guess that was a bros before hose moment, pardon the bad expression. But that's how they viewed her, that's how they judged. And so, obviously that was not normal, but I didn't know it. But I was so programmed to not talk about it that my best friend in high school didn't even know until I told him when I was in my 50s. I think I went out there for a visit and we reconnected after many years. And I mentioned it. He's like, "You never told me that." I'm like, "No way. I must have told you." He says, "You never told me that." Well, I guess we were trained well to keep our mouths shut. And then, of course, the dominating abuse, continued in terms of, just being an overbearing tyrant. And very difficult man to deal with. Now, I love my father, and we reconciled. We did reconcile, but there's no question he was an extremely difficult man, and absolutely 100% convinced he was doing the right thing, because people who are doing the wrong thing are very often 100% convinced that they're doing the wrong thing. It's the people who are worried if they're making the right decision that you probably got a better set of value judgments going on. It's like, gosh, am I doing the right thing? No. My dad never questioned whether or not he was doing the right thing. And in the end, we did. But I'd tell you, when I was in my early 20s, I graduated chiropractic college. Here's where things go weird on upleveling, right? So I started upleveling because I started having relationship difficulties with my spouse. And I was living in my dad's house. And so we're all up in each other's butts. We're all, newlyweds, and we're living here, and I've got to practice. It's not going well. Well, gee, do you think I maybe had some counter effort going on there? Sort of re-putting myself back in that kind of a position. So I started doing Christian counseling with a lady named B, BEA. And she was great. She goes, that's completely, your childhood was a train wreck, right? And I'm like, no, it was the only child that I had. I don't have anything else to compare it to. And she said, "No, that was crazy, and you have major conflict with your dad. You're going to probably have to have a conversation with him about it, because you're obviously angry, and I didn't put these thoughts in your head." She really didn't. She just popped open the pimple, and then the pus just came out. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to bring it up." So by the time I got home, he brought it up. He's like, "Why are you being such a dick? You're acting like a jerk. Yeah, you got a big chip on your shoulder." So I just told him. I just let him have it. I'm like, "That was horrible. You should have never done that." And he always viewed that as like the best thing that he ever did. So I'm in practice, right? My numbers weren't doing great. California had just transitioned into HMOs, which was a train wreck. We went from like the 80-20 major med. Everything was good. I was almost up to 100 visits a week. It was like working. And then HMOs hit. There was like one guy in the whole county that was authorized to do any chiropractic work, and he was like an hour drive away, right? So it was just a disaster. And then, of course, that was the first Bush-Iraq war, and the economy tanked, and things weren't going well economically. Things weren't going well with me. Things weren't going well between my wife and I, and things were certainly not going well with my dad. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. My wife and I talked, and we did a really good job. We worked as a super good team. I said, I'm going to go to this Murphy seminar in LA, and you and I are going to think about this over the weekend. We'd given ourselves a year of continuing to try, and we're going to think about this, and then we're going to decide whether or not we want to stay, sell the practice, or move. And I landed, I called immediately from the hotel room. I said, no, we got to go. She goes, I feel the same way. So her and I were 100% in lockstep on this. And within 3 months, and this is how serendipity works. Carl Jung is also a big fan of serendipity. Things will shift for you when the time is right and when you're ready for it. And like crazy, weird, odd, circumstantial stuff that you would never think would happen. I'd sold my practice and was gone and moved and had a job in 3 months. Because when I called her from the hotel room, I said, well, I'm going to go down to this seminar. And she said, well, go down there and get a job. I'm like, I don't talk to anybody at seminars. I sit in a corner, I take notes. And that's what I did. I sat in a corner, took notes, and here comes this country yokel guy. He sits right next to me. Hey, how you doing? I work for a guy who's opening practices up and da-da-da-da. And I connected with that guy. I flew out to Chicago. I met him. He's like, if you get a license in Maryland, I will put you in Maryland, put you in an office in Maryland. And then in the meantime, an opportunity came up in Illinois, which I took because I thought to myself, well, I'm making money and I'm 2/3 of the way there. So that office didn't work out good. In the meantime, I had found another job in Maryland and an arrangement, and I loved living in Illinois. The people were the best, so much more friendly than Marylanders. I don't mean to slag you off, Marylanders. Y'all are fine. I figured out how to work with you. But coming from California and going to the Midwest, nicest doggone people and culture I have ever seen. Just salt of the earth stuff. Just really. So Dixon, Illinois, hats off to you. So things started falling in place, and it was a whirlwind, and it cost us a ton of money. We had to spend a lot of money on credit cards. I didn't have the cash for this kind of stuff, so we're charging it up left and right. I've got my student loans on deferment. So there were physical consequences to pay, and it appeared rather chaotic, right? To just bail out of your practice and go to the other side of the country. But at that time, I needed space from my dad. And in a manner of speaking, I was also reclaiming my childhood trauma of being kidnapped and run all over the country, because now I'm kidnapping myself, in a manner of speaking, and isolating myself from the family way out on the East Coast. And being in Maryland has been great. It's been a wonderful career move. You could actually get a job out here. Things worked out super well. But after a while, I ended up running into a situation where I was in practice again in Maryland, and it wasn't going well, and I wasn't really into it. My wife and I were having issues, and I'm like, I need a job with 9 to 5 and insurance. And I thought, hey, I went to a seminar over in da-da-da-da. Maybe I'll stop by an office I hear about. I think they were somewhere over here. And I just randomly stopped in and walked in the door and said, hey, you guys hiring? And they kind of looked at me funny. They're like, maybe. And so I got an interview with the bosses, and they had actually sort of promised another guy that they were going to hire him, but they hadn't signed a contract yet, and they chose me instead. And I've been there for over a decade, and it has been the best up-leveling experience of my life, because I learned how to work within this very large system. The only other big company I ever worked for was Rayleigh's grocery store when I was a bagger. Other than that, it was private practices and small mom and pop practices. And so it's been a fantastic role. But it just goes to show you, it looks like chaos agents are in charge. and you can seem like you're doing something nutty that's definitely not upstat. It got me further into debt. Things were difficult, but it ramped me up. I know this guy who cuts my hair. This is the last haircut he will give me from where we live. He was cutting my kids' hair when they were like 10 and 9. and now they're like almost 30, and great guy. He had his adventures, and he opened this salon about 10 years ago, but I'd met him before that. And he went to a YouTube guy who helps salon owners plan their businesses and stuff, just like chiropractors have these practice management guys. And so he goes to this meeting, which is really intended for like new salon owners, who are like just getting started. And he goes through the meeting, and the guy's like, write down what this seminar has done for you. What have you concluded? And he wrote, I quit. His lease is expiring in his business. And the guy was talking about all the stuff you need to do if you want to downsize, get a smaller place, enhance your overhead and everything. And he was like, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I've done that. I've started 2 practices, in a salon. I've had another business working for a hair product company that he did really well in. And so he goes, I quit. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to quit my practice, get out of this high overhead situation, get out of the business end of things, and just work behind the chair, they would call it. And I just want to work behind the chair. And so he ended up getting a job with them because they have a pretty successful place. And he's like, yeah, I have no doubt. He says it's easier than ever with social media to build up a new practice. And so is he up leveling? Yeah, he's up leveling, because up leveling for him means he's reducing the external time he has to spend running his business, and he goes in and he does what he knows he's going to be able to do for another 10 or 20 years, which is continue to cut hair, but he doesn't want the hassle, and he doesn't like the area, and God knows I feel for him in that respect. This area has gone real south. So so that's an example of somebody who's up leveling in an energetic way. But like I mentioned in the last seminar, it's kind of like being a self-leader. And it was kind of an abrupt move, because he's got relationships in the area that are important relationships to him. But he's going to be living, at 2 states away by Thursday this week. He's packing boxes, and not everybody can move together in his situation. So you have the influence of the subconscious forces. You have the influences of the universal archetypal forces, the personal subconscious, the personal effects of your life, and all of these things are all stewing together. Up leveling is a 2-dimensional concept, right? You're up leveling. Okay, great. You're raising an energetic level, but you're not a 2-dimensional person. You're not you're not going up a staircase. You're sitting at the bottom of an amphitheater, and there's seats all around you. You're in a stadium. Let's say it's a football stadium, or you're at Wimbledon, and you're surrounded by seats, and there's stairways going up to higher levels, including the big boxes at the top. Which section are you going to be in? You can pick any section you want. Somebody from one section would be like, well, you're walking over there. That's not up leveling. It's like, actually, I like those seats, Or maybe you go up there and you don't like those seats. Then you can transverse and move over at the same energy level, or maybe then you can start up leveling it there too. It just depends, You don't have to work that hard all the time. Eventually, you should rest on your laurels a little bit and find a comfortable place. It's okay to be comfortable, but it's also, I can't help it. I'm always wanting to learn something new. So I'm very happy with my job and where I'm at, and I have no intention of going anywhere. But I think the view of up leveling in necessarily a one-dimensional way to help one person, somebody else, achieve their goals takes far less precedence than taking care of your business and handling the PTSD that I got from that kidnapping all those years, and the unconsciousness and just having it all buried. I mean, once my dad passed away, I basically had a panic attack. I had to go in and get the stellate ganglion reset, which kind of calmed my sympathetic nervous system down and helped me to come back to a lower level. So, my father's death was very, very traumatic because it brought up all that stuff. And I mean, father's death's a biggie anyway. It's just going to be hard. And it does. It takes 2 or 3 years. At least it took me 2 or 3 years to kind of work my way through it. But anyway, love my dad. And he stopped by after he died, I'll tell that story later. But I got to get going. Got some work to do. So just wanted to throw a couple more thoughts about this up-leveling thing. It's like whatever. It's probably just a term that's used as a fad, that it's a tale as old as time, and all of that good stuff. So trust in your innate intelligence. Reach in and ask it what it wants. Ask your soul what it wants. Ask you what you want. And then pay attention to your dreams and listen to your heart. And don't make stupid moves, but sometimes you do have to make bold moves. And that takes practice. All right, guys, have a great day. I don't even know if this is working.